Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Data by the TomTom Traffic Index has shown that traffic congestion in Kuala Lumpur and during peak hours in the morning and in evenings have consistently been worse than pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Now, a study done by Boston Consulting Group has found that people living in KL spend about 53 minutes stuck in traffic jams every day. But congestion doesn't only waste time, it also increases pollution and the risk of traffic accidents. Tonight, we take a closer look at some of the policy measures that might work to reduce traffic congestion in KL and the Greater Klang Valley area. Joining us now is Dr. Rosli Khan. He's a transport economist. Dr. Rosli, I'm sure that this is a conversation you've had many times before, but in recent days, many have tried to explain this phenomenon of bad traffic as workers returning to the office after working from home for a couple of years, and now all economic sectors are back in full swing. Can I ask you whether there are other issues at play here, perhaps larger structural issues or problems? What do you think is going on?
All right, Melissa, hi. Thank you for having me for your show. Very happy to be here. We have had 2 years of very mild traffic on the road because of the COVID-19. And I think with the lifting of lockdown, now everybody is eager to get back to work. And instead of working at home, they want to be back in the office environment. Thus, we face this issue about the road congestion, which is not abnormal, but it used to be normal before the pandemic. But to make it worse, I think this time around, people are sort of a bit scared to use public transport. So if you look at the figures, the number of car sales, the small car, by the way, has increased quite a bit. And people choose to drive their own cars to work because they feel safer. They are alone in the car. They are not mixed with any other passengers in the public transport. But for those who can't afford to take their cars to the city center, then they have no choice but to use public transport. I think that's what we are faced at the moment.
So, Rosli, okay, so you're saying it's literally a question of the increase in the car population. Could this have been anticipated by the authorities? Could we have somehow mitigated the worst aspects of increasing car population, a decrease in the use of public transport, and all those other issues that play into traffic congestion? Could this have been anticipated and, as it were, mitigated by policies, incentives and disincentives and such?
Yeah, there was a plan by the federal government to upgrade commuter services, KTMB commuter services, which I think they started way back in 2015. As Melissa mentioned just now, there is a marked decline in the number of commuter passengers from 2015 onwards. After the time when they introduced the double tracking improvement, which meant that there was a reduction in the number of trains serving the 4 major corridors, which are Klang to KL, Rawang to KL, Batu Cave to KL, and Seremban to KL. So what used to be quite a major transfer of passengers from these 4 origins and the stations in between, from 134,000 in 2015, and it has now reduced to only about less than 30,000 per day, which is a big reduction in the numbers. But sad to say that that project after the first phase was done, that was between Rawang to KL, the other two legs between Seremban to KL and Klang to KL never materialized. So the service level for that KTMB commuter services are still at the old level, and it doesn't give confidence to the public transport users to go back to KTMB commuter. So that's what we are facing right now, and it adds to the increase in the traffic congestion on the roads, especially when you look at these areas. They don't have other means of transport except to use cars. Like Seremban to KL, there is no other, mass transit like LRT or MRT. So they were solely depending on KTMB commuter. Same thing, Rawang to KL. There was no other alternative. So when the services were interrupted due to this KBDT2, which still in the repairing stage, it has not been completed. It was due to be completed another 4 years, I think.
Right. Rosli,
So, yeah.
I hear what you're saying in terms of perhaps migration of some of the people who use, some of the commuters who used to use public transport now opting to drive because of unreliable service. Can I ask you a very basic question? Can transport congestion in urban areas be solved? Is this an insurmountable problem that we just have to continue to live with as city dwellers?
You can't solve traffic congestion and expect it to be smooth throughout the day. At least during the peak period, you expect to have some form of congestion. But the trouble now is that people are saying that even during the off peak, there are still congestions on the road. So why is that? Is it because it's so cheap to own cars and then to drive your car into the city center and back home after work? I think it has some relationship to that. Like you know that the government is subsidizing fuel, RON 95. So that make it cheap for people to run cars. So what happens if you remove the subsidy, for instance? Will these people still continue to drive their small cars, or will they shift to public transport? Because as we know today, the MRT is running at a very much lower capacity than they anticipated. It's a huge amount that has been spent on MRT, but they are not attracting the passengers.
Yeah, Rosa, this is very interesting because I know there's a global conversation about, this very kind of infrastructure-heavy option, which is the LRT, MRT systems. But the busways were also an alternative, and it's been, put in place in cities like Ahmedabad in Gujarat state in India quite successfully. In places like Jakarta has a busway system. Why aren't these cheaper, efficient systems not part of the policy discussion that happens around traffic in cities in this country?
Well, it's good to have this mass transit system like LRT or MRT. The point is, what happened to the first mile and the last mile connecting all these stations with their passengers' homes or offices? So you mentioned Jakarta. It's very interesting because they have got similar mass transit system, which is LRT and MRT. And over there, as you get off the stations, there are Gojek everywhere that you can take. So we don't have that. So to connect the alighting passengers to their respective offices, we don't have. So what do you do then? Do you walk in the hot sun, or do you call Grab, or do you rely on the buses, which are not very frequent? So maybe we should allow Gojek to operate between those stations to the offices and from stations back to their house. So that could be the answer. to increase the number of passengers on public transport.
I'm also quite curious to know about other policy interventions. I mean, DBKL says that they're studying ways to reduce traffic congestion. Some of the recommendations that have been tossed around have been a surcharge during peak hours, in the city area, banning heavy vehicles during certain periods of the day. Do you think that these policies might work in Malaysia?
Well, you can't introduce some of these policies on ad hoc basis. You have to look at it comprehensively. Now, I don't think they have got adequate data to make such decisions. When you look at other cities, see London has got congestion charge. So somebody suggested that, okay, why don't we have congestion charge in KL? But it may work for a while because then people will start thinking, oh, I shouldn't drive my car because of the congestion charge, so I therefore jump into a public transport. But public transport, again, if you don't solve the first mile and the last mile, people are not going to use it. So it has to be quite comprehensive solution to increase the number of public transport users in KL. And then maybe up the cost for those people who decide to take their car into the city, up the parking charges, introduce congestion charges, and increase the toll rate maybe. It has to be in line with and then maybe you should channel those income to improve public transport. At the moment, it's independent of each other, which doesn't help. Because, while the highway operators increase their revenue, but public transport is still at the same level. So maybe we should channel that fund.
One last question then for you, Rosli. Why is it that, we don't seem to be able to resolve this? Do we lack, you mentioned the lack of data, but is it a lack of political will? Do we not have competent people running the bureaucracy that can actually think these through? I mean, we have so many studies going on. We'll have the most educated but the most inefficient government bureaucracy in the world by the sounds of how much studying there's going on. What is happening, Rosli?
Well, when you ask that question, you were answering it yourself. So I think all those factors that you mentioned are present in the current situation. A lack of political will could be one of them. Lack of expertise to manage those functions. And if you look at the structure in the country today, it's a bit fragmented. You have got one organization running rail. You have got another organization, MRT Corp, also running rail. You have got LRT, Prasarana, also running rail. So, why can't we merge all these agencies, government agencies, and let them run like those places like in Tokyo or London under one management? But, we are a bit fragmented at the moment. So how do we draw expertise into solving this problem? Because everybody looking at their own backyard. Right.
Understood. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosli, for joining us on the show today. That was transport economist Dr. Rosli Khan. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We will be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, thanks so much for staying with Sharad and I on Consider This. We're discussing the worsening traffic congestion in Kuala Lumpur in the Greater Klang Valley area and what policy interventions might work for Malaysia. Joining us now is Associate Professor Dr. Lau Teck Hua. He's the head of the Road Safety Research Centre under University Putra Malaysia. Dr. Lau, the increased traffic, I guess the rationale for the traffic congestion has been the increased traffic as people return to work and to school in this transition to endemicity period. But can I ask you whether this increased traffic, the traffic congestion, could have been anticipated and therefore mitigated?
Yes, definitely. Okay, we all expected this will happen after the post-COVID-19 period, and this is not only happened in Malaysia; it happened almost worldwide. Okay, the main reason is because of we found that there's a group of people, quite a big group of people. Previously, there was the public transport users, but now they refuse to use public transport because of the worry. They worry that they may are infected by COVID-19. So then they will choose to have that to use their own motorbike, or perhaps maybe they prefer to buy a car. And nowadays you can say that okay, if you go for the longest installment periods, you only need to pay 3 or 4 thousand. You will get a small car, a brand new small car. So this could be the main reason why suddenly we found that there is a very serious congestion in Klang Valley and KL.
Yeah, but were there problems already, Dr. Lau, even
Mm.
before the pandemic? I would challenge anybody who said that we didn't have bad
No.
traffic conditions in the Greater Klang Valley before the pandemic. And what about the problems that underscore that period?
Okay, I believe that traffic congestion is not a new term. Okay, we have this term, we have this problem long time ago. I always I mention to my students. I said that okay, I remember 20 years ago, we keep on talking about traffic congestion, but during that time, it's not that serious. But we thought it's very serious, and we still able to predict when will be the traffic congestion. Like for example, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, don't go to the city center. But now, even before the COVID-19, this is not easy to be predicted. It can happen anytime. But the problem is now, after COVID-19, it jumped up suddenly. Okay, so that everyone can feel it. Okay, they can feel the pressure of the traffic congestion. I had the experience last week. I went to Sri Pentas from UPM to Sri Pentas. Usually, it take you even during peak hours. It won't take more than 1 hour, seriously. But that day, I took about 1.5 to 2 hours to reach Sri Pentas. So
Right.
that now they can see it's quite serious.
Yeah, I think everyone has experiences of that. Particularly recently, everyone can cite a period where the commute is much longer than what was initially anticipated. Can I ask you? You said we've been talking about traffic congestion for decades now, and I know you've been looking at this, studying this topic for many years. What have you observed in the way Malaysia has approached traffic congestion? The need to resolve it. Where is almost the mindset or the thinking? How do we think? How does government think about traffic congestion woes?
Okay, I can see our policymakers. They attempt to solve the problem, but it's not sufficient. At least I can see like public, we choose to do nothing. Do nothing is always one of the possible solution. If we are out of our way, there is no way for us to solve the problem. Maybe we should go for do nothing. But our governments, okay, like for example, okay, we have the MRT, we have the LRT. The reason why we want to have MRT, LRT is that we want to change the travel pattern of the public. Okay, if you think about, okay, if you ask me what are the solutions to solve traffic congestion problem, I say there are many ways. There are many ways, okay, but all the ways must have two characteristics. One is they can change the travel pattern. The second, it can change the behavior of the drivers. Having the public transport like MRT, LRT have this purpose. Okay, we want to change the travel patterns. But do you think that are we successful? I don't think so. If you compare with the use rate of MRT and LRT compared with Japan, Korea, we are underused. Even for bus, okay, mainly Malaysia refuse to use bus. The reason is because of the ego. They think that bus is not for us. Bus is for the foreigners. Okay, for foreigners. So that's why now we have to think about how are we going to persuade our drivers to leave their car, to leave the motorcycle at home and jump to the public transport. This is always the challenge. Okay, if you make a quick survey in Kuala Lumpur, okay, say when you track in the jam, you make a quick survey surroundings, you look at the surrounding car. Most of the car, I would say more than 90% of the car only have one occupant. only have the drivers. But the car is designed not only for one occupant. Motorcycle maybe is designed for one occupant, but the car should have more than one occupant.
Right. Okay. So you say change the travel plans or change the behavior. Can I ask you, because one of the ways the government is thinking about solving traffic congestion is by building more highways. Will that help ease traffic congestion?
No.
Why not?
It's just like chicken and egg. Okay. So we try to, okay, now we can see that, okay, we are building more and more city highway. But do you think that, okay, we are solving the problem? I don't think so. We are inducing more traffic. So that's why I say this is like chicken and egg. The main problem is because of we don't have a fixed policy. Okay, we have the highway. We keep on building the new highway, hoping that by having a new highway, we can solve the. But at the same time, we spend billion or trillion, I don't know, okay, in building the public transport. So it means that we are going two different directions, and these two directions are contradicting among each other. So I believe that if I still keep on like this, doing this thing, then maybe like 10 years or 20 years later, we will see the same problem still happen in our place, in our Klang Valley.
Right. So, Dr. Lau, it seems to some casual observers that, aren't the government and policymakers extremely naive? Or there's a little bit of cynicism going on, because we know that a lot of the policy options that are elected for make money for certain groups. Is our policy making around traffic and the design of of flows within the city kind of hampered by vested interests who want certain types of solutions, and they might be very partial solutions that push the problem to another place, kick the can down the road, as it were, but never really truly change the way in which people move within the cities? Is that the problem? Because the solutions are multiple. We read about them all the time. Other cities in the world solve their problems. Why aren't we solving our problems?
Okay, I can see most of the solutions we implemented previously, it seems that it didn't solve the problem truly, but it migrate the problem. Okay, you migrate the problem from one location to another location. Okay, perhaps maybe I give you one example. You said that I build a new highway, or maybe I install additional lane along NKVE because of NKVE is too jammed. So now from 3 lane, I increase to 4 lane. Okay, then you induce more traffic to use NKVE, but this traffic, when they move to other location outside the MKV, then it will migrate the jam to the areas. So now, if we want, or our policymaker want to solve the problem, first thing is that they have to figure out what is the root of the problem. They cannot say that, like for example, recently that they say they just announced they want to ban the heavy vehicles to be used to be on route during the peak hours. I believe that this is not a new policy. This policy has been in place for more than 10 years already. Okay, but suddenly they say that we want to ban. Okay, now this is good, but they have to mention it clearly. Where are they talking about? What time they're talking about? But the problem is that, do you think that heavy vehicle is the main source of the problem? Okay, we have to find out. And at the same time, we also have to make sure that we are not going to have rely on a single treatment to solve the problem before we really figure out what is the root of the problem. And this is a very complicated problem because of the Klang Valley. Actually, it's not big enough, quite small, and we have about a few millions of vehicles in Klang Valley. So banning the heavy vehicles, yes, it's a good move. Please do a proper study, find out what is the root of the problem. But we also have to think about other solutions. But now, even KTM already announced that the ridership of KTM dropped 50%. So what KTM should do to regain the public confidence? They have to do the dialogue, and to understand why people lost their confidence to use the public transport. Perhaps maybe one of the reasons is because of COVID-19, but another reason is because we heard about many incidents, the MRT, the KTM, the LRT breakdowns. So that's why they lost the confidence. So there are many things we have to do. Okay, right. Imagine that if one car trapped in a jam for half an hour in a day, how many million of cars in city? You add up, maybe it will equal to like 10 years. It's a big loss. Okay.
It is. Definitely. Dr. Lau, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We appreciate your insights. Dr. Lau Teck Hua there from UPM's Road Safety Research Centre, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris.
I'm Sharad, signing off.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.